Well, we welcome you to this session. Thank you for being on time. We love that positive attitude, and being on time for the sessions shows great respect to our lovely speaker, Jonas, who is already ready with his slides presented. So I'm going to pass the floor to our lovely host, Saravanan, who will be hosting the session presented by Jonas. Saravanan, the virtual stage is now yours to host. Take it away. Oh, Saravanan, you need to unmute. There we go.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take it away.
Thank you, Daniel. Welcome back, guys. So we have another sessions with the Jonas, who has, who's CEO and founder of Ask UI, right? So Ask UI, we must know about the Ask UI tool. So which is a codeless tool that has capable of automating desktop automation, web, and native mobile application, game automation. We have a lot of stuff, right? So the topic that Jonas bring to table is what are the challenges we face in the codeless automations in the UI part, right? So and how to solve them and how to find a better solution for the same. So let's have a discussion. We have a presenter ready. So yes, Jonas, the stage is yours. You can take and you can go forward.
All right, thank you so much for the nice introduction. Yeah, and welcome to my talk. Yeah, as you mentioned, I want to talk about a lot of things I've learned in the journey of founding a company which does codeless automation as well as test automation with code. So we stumbled across a lot of challenges. I think they are not that highly targeted right now, or there's a lot of things we will have in the future to do to solve these challenges. And I just want to give a broad overview and show you what kind of challenges we had, which are still in the market, why are there challenges, and in the end also give a short outlook into future developments with artificial intelligence, actually, how it will solve or could solve kind of these challenges. But first, let me give a few more backgrounds to myself. So this beautiful slide is just a short overview. So I studied originally industrial engineering and management, not necessarily in the test automation space. But after my studies, I went more into writing, first of all, blog posts for a few QA communities, and then even become the speaker and founder of the company. Yeah, and right now we are growing and doing better than ever at Ask UI. And also, besides the work, I also love the QA communities, and we also have one on our own. So we are based in Germany, in Karlsruhe. We are the software testing Karlsruhe meetup there, where you can join and watch free talks from now and then, once per month. And also we have a Slack community, which is called Automation Advocates, where we also discuss different kind of test automation challenges and trends and share events and so on. If you scan the QR code, I'm not sure, I think it's recorded, then you can directly join the community as well. All right, but now let's get started. So I want to start maybe with a bit of a basic understanding of what actually is no-code automation, codeless, low-code, scriptless, and all these kind of words. And there's a definition which we put up. I think we kind of rephrased it out of basic Wikipedia articles about it and stuff like that. And basically, no-code automation is for technical and non-technical users. So maybe I'll just read it out first. No-code automation allows both technical and non-technical users to automate processes through graphical user interfaces instead of where the UI usually consists of drag and drop boxes. So I want to emphasize on three things here. So first of all, I think there's a misunderstanding in the market that no-code automation tools is only for non-technical persons, but instead it actually is also for technical persons as well. Why is that? So often it's marketed, okay, even everyone can write code without coding knowledge, you can do test automation. And this is kind of true. But on the other side, you still need to have some kind of understanding of how test cases are managed, how they're structured, how it actually works, how the systems work to design good test automation suites, which actually benefit the company and help producing better quality software. And that's why it's actually for both for technical and non-technical, and the main purpose is actually to hasten the process to go to market, because it's easier or faster to write the test automation suits with the no-code tool, because it allows like easier integrations and stuff like that. And this is done often through a graphical user interface, as per state of right now. Maybe there will be automation suits which will be created by natural language, which will just talk to a computer further on. But right now, the interface is the graphical user interface. Is like, and if you have not the graphical user interface, there's also like voice user interface, which I mentioned, or command line interfaces where you can also do your test automations, but with code. So this is one of the key aspects. And then there's the point, UI usually consists of drag and drop boxes. I would say this is not necessarily true anymore. It was a long time where you had like very process-oriented test automation suits, where you drop them together and then you find different paths and so on. But right now, more and more tools which actually do it with natural language are coming up in the market. All right. And I also want to show like where these kind of different approaches come from, or like what different kind of no-code approaches there are, because like always it's no-code, but you have to differentiate. So each one has its own use case. And I want to go over them a bit. So for example, we started back in the days with record and replay, and the easiest system for record and replay is just on the left, you have an application, you click through it, and you record the actual position of the clicks and just replay it over the application. So like every time you have a release, or like every time you want to test. This is not a good approach. It can be a good approach if you have like a really, really simple application which you want to throw away at some given point of time in the future. But in general, a record and replay is very high maintainability, because if you change positions of elements, the test automation suits will break. It's always the same click path. There's no possibility for more flexibility, for any kind of different kind of stuff. And so if you see this kind of thing going on under the hood, depending on your requirements, maybe you should consider using something else. Then right now we're more on the stage of the selector recording and relational descriptions and stuff like that. Selector recording can also be like written through BDD or something. But often one thing is like, how do we actually find the elements in the UI? And one thing is, which is more robust, is if you have like, and I will talk about it later, smart selectors in place, where you record instead of positions, you interact with the application itself, like with a white box. We look under the hood of the application and see, okay, I click on an element and then I get to like what kind of interface a selector, for example, XPath in web or in the document object model. And then you record that and use that for automation. And then if you change something visually, or like if you don't change the selector under the hood and it's recorded, you can rerun the test automation and it will still work. So this is more, it's easier to maintain, basically, it's more robust. And a lot of tools are actually focusing on making those kind of selectors more robust, because they also can break with self-healing efforts and stuff like that. So this is where the no-code actually comes in place a bit better. And then the most modern approach, I would say, is the relational descriptions. I think it's also released in the latest Selenium release, and a few tools are actually working on that. It's where you don't just record like a selector, but you rather make sure your test automation suite doesn't break by ensuring that you have test descriptions written which are based on relations of different kind of elements, so they can self-assure them. What do I mean by that? For example, if you look on the right here, you have this, I don't know, there's on top James, and there's like a title, and then there's login with like 2 text fields, and you could say type example at email.com under below of element chains into text field or something, and then it would find by this natural language descriptions element which have like a similar language in place or are text fields, and look how the elements are sorted, and then look through the relation of these kind of elements where they are located. And then you even have the thing that when the relations change and you do not want them to change, the test will break, which is a good thing, because like with classic selector recording it wouldn't. So you implicitly test for visual requirements as well, not only for functional, and it makes them just more stable because multiple selectors can self-assure each element during the runtime. All right, and by the way, if you want to check, we also did a cheat sheet on all kind of different no-code automation tools. I think we have 12 to 20 on the list. There's a cheat sheet with the definition and stuff like that and different kind of tools. If you scan the QR code, you can just download it for free if you want to check in there and see what each tool can do. Because I don't think I have the time, I think, go over each one of these. All right, and now that you have like these kind of approaches for how to find elements or how they actually work, we have the first challenge, which is I will call the Locator challenge. So the Locator challenge is basically the challenge of no-code automation tools. How can I find elements in the UI? So most of no-code automation tools are really good with web applications because there you have like typically a DOM and you can record a lot of XPath selectors, CSS selectors, and they all kind of works. However, there's a few developments going on with Iframe, Shadow DOM, with integrated maps applications, third-party apps, and stuff like that, where you cannot really access it to like outside, and you have to build like you have to maintain it a lot. And there is a challenge where no-code automation is just limited by the technology which is used for the application itself. So it can happen that you say, okay, I want to use this kind of application, this no-code application for test automation, and then I record or write all the tests. And because you're limited to the no-code web front end, you cannot access like the specific selector because this no-code automation tool only selects like XPath elements. And then you are, for example, lost if you cannot access this element because it's in some kind of hidden in some kind of iframe. And then you wouldn't be able to automate that kind of use case if the tool underlying doesn't support like iframe support. And you cannot build it yourself because you obviously use a no-code tool. And this is why I love people integrating also the possibility to add code or low code within no-code automation tools. And typically also, why I put the slide there is to make sure that you understand this Locator challenge, because a human doesn't have this. If you have a manual, like I don't like manual tester, but if you have a human tester on a system, they don't have this problem with which kind of selector is available, where can I find a selector, where can I find the element. They just look at the screen and you see it visually in the UI, and you can say, okay, I want to click on the login button on the top, and it just finds the element. And this is not so true for the computer. So at the computer, you always have to, or at least for us now, you have to look into the system and see how is the element structured, where's the selector, and you have to find the right selector, and the tool, actually the no-code tool has to support it. And this is one of the challenges, even with arising new technologies. So I mentioned Shadow DOM is like as one part of this problem. So, and there's actually three. I want to go over those three. There are kind of more with maps and so on, but I all find it kind of like thing. So let's start with the Shadow DOM. What is it? Like, why is it so challenging? If you have an element in the DOM, it's basically a subtree of DOM element. So a Shadow DOM is like you have the document object model, and then there's a subtree of elements which you put inside, which are not in the actual outlying DOM. So their XPath selectors won't work. So you need to have some kind of Shadow DOM support if you feel like the underlying application uses Shadow DOM elements, which you can look for in the no-code automation tool. But however, CSS selectors would work. So if you only use Shadow DOM and the no-code automation supports CSS selector, then you're good to go, basically. Then we have iframe, for example, the next one in the mid. The difference between an iframe and a shadow DOM is iframe is not a full document instead of just like a subtree within a whole HTML document. And there, it's interesting because like a lot of tools don't support it, but a lot of tools do support it. It's like 50-50, I would say, but I'm actually not sure about this number. So basically the normal XPath selector and the normal CSS selector would not work out of the box, but with like classical code approaches, you could just move in the DOM to the iframe element and then use inside this iframe those kind of selectors. It is like, it has to be supported though. So it's like not easy to integrate into a no-code automation tool to actually do this if they are based on like, I don't know, some kind of Selenium, like Selenium under the hood or whatever they use, what kind of frameworks. And then you try to find this iframe and move into there, and then you can grab those selectors. And this is also challenging. You have to look for in the automation tool if it is supported. And the last one is Canvas. And so Canvas is the most challenging for no-code tools at the moment, I would say. A Canvas element is just a rendered graphic into a 2D plane. And for example, maps could be a Canvas element, or like graphs, or some kind of images, or like even a normal UI, which is like displayed or rendered in an element. And the problem with that is you cannot access the elements because they are just rendered elements, so they are just the image basically. And if you want to try like the record thing with the selector approach, and then you build no-code stuff on top of it and try to use it, you will probably fail. So if you have a lot of Canvas stuff going on in your application and you are choosing a no-code automation tool for that, you're better not choosing one which only relies on XPath selectors or CSS selectors. What you can do, or what you should do instead, is try to find if they use image-based or visual selectors as well. So you can look for crop out images of the elements you want to search, and they find it visually. And AI actually helps a lot there. So there are a lot of tools, I won't name any, but there are a lot of tools which support AI usage or AI classification of elements. And you can use those tools to find elements which are normally really, really hard to find with selectors, which could be maps element, which could be graphics, which could be like something which is completely visual. So you have to decide what kind of support your no-code automation tool has to be or has to have by looking what kind of technology do you use in your application. How can I access those elements, and are those elements finding or those selectors actually supported by the no-code automation tool? Otherwise, it can happen that you choose a tool and after like buying for the tool and like it works for a few things, you recognize that it won't work for a lot of things inside the tool. All right. So how do I solve this locator challenge with like what are the current developments which try to help dealing with that? Check time. All right. So one is with the AI I just mentioned is OCR. So if you try to find something via text, or like the original selector is not working, you can go like looking for them by text, which is called optical character recognition. So it works that you find visually like text. Everyone knows the system where you just take a picture and then it reads out the text, and it's basically the same. And you can use that if you have like really text-based application and you can find every element via text and validate on that. You can use the system which supports OCR, optical character recognition, and then it's really nice. You can deal with that. Then what I mentioned for the canvas elements is the picture-in-picture search, for example, which is like visual searching for element. So for example, you can crop out the element and then it will search for the exact element within the screen. And if it finds it, it knows the position of this element and you can click on it, or like it will choose this kind of position and then perform the action on this element. But you have to be sure that if you use that picture-in-picture search or pixel matching, or it's often called, you want to make sure that you don't have to test on a lot of different kind of resolutions, because different kind of resolutions will fail the test because it's resolution dependent, and you also want to make sure that your elements from the look and feel doesn't change too often because of the pixel matching. They have to be the same for finding the element. What I also mentioned in the beginning is like, which can help is relations, and even like a combination of optical character recognition and relations. For example, is here. If you would say type test in a text field below email, you would look for a text email on the screen. You could actually look for it visually, and then try to find the text field. And then it would find this text field and type it in, like in any text field under the email or in the nearest one, it would type in test. And so you make sure that independent of like underlying technology use, you can still find the element and locate it correctly. And the last one, I already mentioned, that is also the self-healing tests, is where you basically try to self-heal the locators by using all different kind of methods. So it's basically an approach where you try to use every kind of approach I just mentioned to find these kind of elements, and they back up each other. And if, for example, here, I don't know, here the text changes for, there's a button login with, I don't know, some sign in there, and then it changes and the test script fails because the text is changed, but you still have, like, you were using text until then, but now the test fails because of text and you have self-healing in place. It would not fail because then it can just like use another selector, for example, based on, I don't know, the XPath selector, which will then look if it works. And if one of those works, it can self-heal itself and still run correctly, and update the test suite accordingly. All right, and this is basically for this kind of challenge, the Locator challenge. So you want to look for tools which are really in-depth looking of different kind of selectors, which are supporting different kind of technologies, and also look for your application yourself, like what kind of technology support do I actually need in the tool. The next challenge I want to talk about is the complexity challenge. So the complexity challenge is more of a no-code automation challenge, which I learned from my experience as a founder. So we built a no-code automation tool, and during our pitching of the tool, we got a lot of questions from our customers. So it was always like, maybe you ask them questions yourself. Can I set variables? What about if conditions? Is it possible to implement loops? What kind of integrations do you have? How do you handle different kind of tests, and so on and so forth? And these kind of questions, they get asked so often that we ask ourselves, all right, if we would implement each requirement each customer has for us, we would just building another programming language just with inside a graphical user interface. And this is actually not what no-code is about. No-code is about making things easier and faster. And if you build a new programming language within a UI, just not as a, like, it just doesn't make sense. So it's more complex in the end. And a lot of tools, I think, fall into this trap, like trying to implement, adding stuff, supporting this and that, and they become so complex that in the end, someone who can just code would be easier and faster writing those kind of tests instead of using the no-code application, which then just destroys the benefit of the no-code at all. And that's why we thought to ourselves, how can we solve actually this kind of complexity thing and find a sweet spot between those kind of applications? How can we make it that you're able to write fast test cases and are not bound to like building another programming language? Yeah. So what do we have there as a solution? And I have 3 points there. The first one is always check for the return on invest for each test case. So what do I mean by that? Look for how complex the solution has to be, like never make a more complex solution than actually needed. And also try to understand what kind of test cases you are building and try to find the easiest solution. So yeah, what else? Like return on invest is also something which is like subjective to your stack. So you have to find a good metric for it. So how it can be like, how much test coverage do I have, or it can be how many users like. For example, the easy example is always like for one user journey, which is really complicated to automate because you have a lot of different kind of third-party integrations, stuff like that. And you look at the usage data and only 5% of your users actually use this kind of journey. Wouldn't you want to integrate like a test automation suite just for that test case, which is so complex to build and so hard to maintain? Probably not, but it depends on your numbers, how you want to calculate it. And this is like always to be discussed within your organization and with your stakeholders to see like, okay, what kind of test cases can we automate? And then try to ask yourself the question, should we automate them all? And how far shall we automate them? And what is the return on investment of each automation use case? And it should be, of course, always be like, for everyone, it should be clear that it makes sense to automate this, because if it breaks, we lose a lot of money because this shop is down or whatever else. Then the next one is, if you're building a no-code automation tool, make sure that you are able to still add code inside your test automation framework. So as I mentioned, no-code is like, can be super complex and too complex sometimes. And it's better, I think, to use a simple no-code automation tool, which might not have all kinds of different functionalities you want. But then the learning curve for the tool is way lower. You're way faster with integrating, with building like a huge amount of test cases, which are super easy, and then use code for the most complex ones. Don't try to use like, if you only have a small amount of super complex test automations running, or you want to have like different kind of use cases where like, if you only have a one map application, you don't shoot for the largest no-code automation tool and try to use it just for the sake of it, because then you can use it for everything. But then the learning curve is so high, it wouldn't be like beneficial for you. That's why I think the best approach is try to find lean automation solutions, which covers like most of your test cases, and then go for different kind of specialized frameworks, adding into the automation suite for the very niche use cases. And the last one is also coming back to the point for whom no-code automations are built. So it's always also technical persons. So no-code automation doesn't solve the job for testing the application for you. You always have to have a good understanding of how good tests are structured, with and without code. You should understand the technology behind it, the underlying technology, because the no-code automation tools do not do the job for you. And I can't stress this enough. A tool is only a thing which shall help you in your daily life, but it will never take the job out of your hands of creating good and well-structured test automation suites. All right. Those are basically the challenges I want to talk about, and feel free to ask questions. I'm not completely done. I will just have like 2 minutes in give a short outlook into AI, what it may help with in the future. So actually we are working on that as well, but a lot of companies I think are too. So for the Locator challenge, for example, this is an approach which can help. Is a human can always find elements and you don't have to look inside the technology. That's why a lot of people are trying to train AI models on like understanding how user interfaces look like. And this is actually one way to solve the Locator challenge, not based on locators or selectors, but rather on the whole visual representation. It only works for UI tests, obviously, but only test like a human, train an AI on understanding how UIs work, and use that for automation. So you're not dependent on any kind of selector. You can automate any kind of technology. And this is basically the outlook or the future way of solving the Locator challenge. And for the complexity challenge, one can think that the NLP part of AI will help us. So it can be that we try to write everything with natural language instead of like doing a model-based approach or something, that you just write your test automations with, as we speak, like a human, describe what happens there and use that. And for example, GPT-3 is one of these models which will be in the future very relevant. So there was this idea on the right where they came up with different startup ideas and it really made sense. And on the left, visual question answering is one topic where you ask a question to an image and then it will give you the answer. And that's it for my talk. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm happy to answer some questions.
Thank you, Jonas. That was very insightful sessions about the Codeless tool, how to find the right tool and how to, get placed into the right tool for the UI automations, right? So we have one question from the participant. Which Codeless tool do you recommend for UI testing?
Yeah, I don't think you can answer this like just right out of the box. Of course, I recommend our own tool, but we are building actually a code framework right now. It depends on what you want to test, as I mentioned. So what kind of application are you building? So do you have a lot of maps applications in there, or like do you have a lot of canvas elements? Then you are good to go probably like Eggplant or like some kind of visual testing tools which focus on like finding elements visually. If you have like a normal basic web application without any native mobile stuff like that, and you just want to test this one web application, you probably are good to go with a classical selector recording tool, and which is easy to use for some pre-flight or so. And if you do like complex enterprises, maybe to try this Tosca because it has all kind of different kind of integrations. So it really depends on the use case. I wouldn't say there's one answer for everything.
Thank you. So challenges, it is another question. Challenges faced by visual testing tools. What are the challenges?
Yeah, so there's quite a few. So one I mentioned is the resolution. If you only have like a pixel matching approach and you look for those kind of elements, one is if you want to test some different kind of resolutions of the application, your test will often break. So you have to maintain a large database of your objects, and you can see it basically with a lot of visual testing tools that you have to store a lot of objects or cropped out elements, which you need for the automation. And this is also like high maintenance effort to always store them. This is one of them. And if you go more into this AI phase direction, that you have this learned model which understands the UI elements based like a human, and you have an AI model, then you are facing the accuracy problem. So that, for example, if you wanted to detect for exact numbers, so you want to validate that there's a huge long number always the same, OCR, for example, would sometimes be not super accurate and make out of a 9, 7 or something, and then it would get errors there. So I think these are some kind of challenges, but I think they are solvable with AI getting better in the future. When the accuracy is more profound, then I think we can solve this as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, that's all questions, Jonas, we have so far. We have another question, but we will take it later. I mean, we'll reach out to you offline to get answered.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Jonas. So Manish, you can go for the quiz.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonas. Yeah. So let me take over from here.
I will just leave, or
sorry.
You can stay. You can.
Or...
We are just moving for the quiz session, so you can still be here.
Still be here. Okay, guys. So hope the screen is visible and we are set to go. So this is the leaderboard from the previous quiz, and I'm starting quiz for this session. Here you go. Okay. Yes, that is true. Here you go with the next question. All of the above. That is true. I think so. Everyone? QA engineer. Let's say users. Correct. Going to next. Yeah, tricky. Okay. 87% saying Newton. That is correct. And here's the final question for this session, guys. Here you go. Will it be? %24% people saying that. Okay, false. So ready for the leaderboard, guys. Here you go. Okay, we have a same leaderboard from last. Thank you, everyone. We'll be back.
Thank you, Manish.
with quiz
Thank you.
soon. Yeah.
Thank
Over to
you
you.
for the quiz, and thanks, Jonas, for the insightful session on the low code, no code automations on the Ask UI as well. So, yeah, thank you. Wish you good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
See you.
Thanks, participants. Yeah, so we have another session. So please leave the session from here and go to the lobby and join on the next sessions. So please feel free to share your post in the LinkedIn as well as in the Twitter. There is a contestant that's going on. So thank you, guys.